data of an entity dynamically based on, like we used to have a read entity, same way we have a EML. So I'll just show over here what it can be and what all things you can do. So what we are going to learn over here is a EML. In full form, it's called Entity Manipulation Language. Now, what is it and what is the purpose? So as the name suggests, the purpose of it is that like I do have a internal table, right? So if I do have an internal table, I can simply go ahead and read out the data using read table. If I do have a database table, I can directly read out the data using a select query. If I do have a view, I can still read out the data using a select query. I can write a select query on my view. But even on the same direction, if it's a CDS view entity, I can still read out the data. But it would only allow me reading the data from the live database table. Now, for example, consider my user is entering the value over here in the editable screen. Whatever values he is entering, I want to get those information instead of getting the value which are into the database, because this information is still not onto the database. So in that case, how I can read those information? So one suggestion can be that, okay, if I'm just going over here 2023 05 2023 sorry 25, I'll just say today, tomorrow, and I'll just say 100 US dollar, for example. Okay. Now, as you can see, I would have some sort of information over here called draft table. So if I just open this table, okay, and if you try previewing the data of it, you would be able to see that I do have a draft table which is persisting, or I can say saving the information of the which is saving the information of my particular data right over here. Now the issue over here will be that the information is in the draft table. It's not in my real database table. Definitely, I can go ahead and write a select query on this, but it's not at all advisable to write a select query on data on a particular draft table that's against the SAP's guideline. So in order for us to read the data from the draft buffer, what instead we can do is you can simply go ahead and write a EML statement. So the purpose is same, just the syntax is differing. So using EML, you can read. Using EML, you can perform all the operations on a draft or a non-draft information for a wrap view, which are generated in the form of an entity, be it a root view entity or non-root view entity. Now, when I say any particular transaction, you can think it as of a, let's just say read, create, update, delete, okay. Or I can say even execute an action. So any sort of such actions, or I can say operation that you want to perform when it comes to wrap-based view, you can do it via the entity manipulation language. So that's something that you should be knowing. Okay. Now, over here, if I just consider that I am willing to write a read EML. Okay. So how would you be able to do it? How you would be doing it? So in that particular case, what you can do is you have to write a particular write a particular syntax in the form of a manage in the form of a wrap. And for that, what you would be doing is you would need to I can say write the syntax in this particular form. So I'll just say we'll learn one syntax for the read EML first, post which we'll also try to learn the syntax for create, update, and delete. So let's just go with a read first. Okay. So how I can read out the data. So when I say I want to read the data, can I read it out of the context without any sort of information? No, right? And for that, I would need some sort of a key parameter. So for example, I want to read out the data in this draft table. So I want the key parameter, okay, that is initialized with 0. So what you can instead do is you can simply say read. And here, as you can see, as you are already getting the syntax suggestion saying entities of. So you can simply say read entities of. And what of what particular information that you are willing to read out over here. That's something that you should be writing. So when I say read entities of, here always what you would be passing is your root view entity. What is a root view entity? So you have already learned that what is a root view entity. So out of this two, what is a root view for me? It's a ZR1, your travel. Another, you can also get the name of root view entity from here. So you can say read entities of this. So it will read all the entities of this particular root view entity. Okay, and then you would say that you would like to read this information in a local mode. So when I say in local mode, what you are trying to say is that I am in the context of this BO. Whenever I am writing this logic, I am in this particular business objects transactional layer, and from which I want to read the data locally. Because when I am saying that I want to read out the data of this BO, there can be two chances. I might be reading out the information being outside of this BO. I mean, I want to read out the information of this travel. I am writing a read entities of, I am writing a EML statement from a web program. Right. In that case, I cannot say in local mode because I'm not locally inside this. So you can think of like a private, public and protected sections of a class, right? So when I am in a class, I can read out the private component of it. But when I am in outside of that particular class, I can only read out the public of component of it. Same way, when you say in local mode, the system will give you a capability of reading the draft data first. And if the information is not there in draft, then it will read the real table for you. But that's something which the system would do for you only if you are within that particular BO's premises. That's why you have to write the in local mode. So I'll just read entities of this. Then you have to specify name of the entity. Like if this BOI, if I consider it does have two entity, which entity you are trying to read? So it can have a travel, it can have a booking as well. So which one are you referring to? So as you can say control space, you will get the name of those two entities. I want to read the travel because that's my parent one and that's what I am currently interested in knowing. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. Another thing you would be doing is what all fields you want to read. So for example, you want to read the fields, for example, here you can specify the fields and you can specify the list of fields. For example, you want to read the agency ID or let's just say, there used to be a start date, right? Oh, there used to be a begin date. That's the reason. Okay. For example, you want to read this multiple field like that, that also possible. Or another option could be that you want to read the all fields. So you can simply say all fields. Whatever you are writing, either a specific field or all field, post which you have to specify like what should be the input parameter, what are the input parameters that you would be able to pass. For that, you have to specify with, and then this EML ideally have a matching or a non-matching, or I can say compatible or non-compatible key parameter that you might be receiving. For example, I'm in a determination of a travel, and that's why I'm reading the travel information. That's obvious, and that's why the key parameter that you are receiving over here would definitely match with the key parameter of this particular travel booking. But it also possible that I might need the information of my travel while I am in a booking entity, right? So in that case, definitely you cannot directly pass the key parameter. And that's why it's always suggestible that what you have to do is you'll always specify that method generate travel ID within this. If you are in a determination, whatever input parameter you are receiving says keys. Okay, you will say all field over here and post which you would say with and then write the corresponding, which would do the relevant mapping of the key parameter. And you have to specify hash and then you have to specify the input parameter that you got. I'll just say keys over here. Okay. And here you can say a result data and you can get the data into any local variable. So for example, I am saying ls travel. If you want to see that, okay, if I am getting any sort of if you want to see that, okay, whenever I'm reading this particular information, I hope that's success. That's a success, right? I am not receiving any error or warning. So for that, you can also go with reported, and here you can also get the reported instance of it. So in case there are any message which are being raised, you can also get those in a reported. If there are any message or there are data which is failing, for example, if you are passing key parameter of 5 and only 2 are being read, then 3 are failed, then you can also get those information in a fail. So ideally, result data is a, I can say, output data. Fail data is a key information, or I can say key value information of records which failed the relevant EML operation. So for example, if I am reading and my out of the 5 keys I am passing, one of my key is failing the read, then you will get that particular key information in the LT fail. And due to what reason that particular execution failed, okay, so I can say any sort of a error or warning or any messages that you would be getting for the record, if generated, you would be receiving in the reported parameter. So that these are the purpose of the result reported and failed information over here. So there is something that you should be knowing. So I'll just format this particular code. And now what I'll do is I'll just go over here, activate this, and we'll try to see is our system able to read the information that we are trying. So I'll just put a breakpoint again over here as well. Okay, now let's just start with the circle one. So here I am. I do have a, I'll just go back instead because the code base is changed. So I'll just refresh this. I'll just create this. Okay, and here what I would like to have is I'll just say 2023, 25, 2023, 25, today, tomorrow, and 100 US dollar, for example. Okay, now let me just say I want to, as you can see, the draft is being updated. Each time you are changing something, draft gets updated. Okay, now I'll just say create. As you can see, now you are in the debugger mode, your cursor is over here, you get the direct control. Okay, and now I want to, where is that variable section? Variables. Okay, now as you can see, I am inside this. I'll just say, as you can see here, like a normal SAP Go, you would have F5, 6, 7, 8. So I'll just say F6. And here I would like to view my local variables, so which are my LT travel, failed, and reported. So as you can see, as I wrote the EML statement, I'm able to read out my data called LT travel. And here, whatever information I just passed in my input, I am able to get all those information saying this is my information and these are the values which are being passed. Is there any record which is failing due to incorrect key or something? So here, as you can see, for each of the BO, it would try to read out those information and it says that no, none of the information is failing. So here, as you can see, travel and booking. Same way, there are no messages also being raised. So that's why you would be able to see that no messages are being raised in any of the category. So this is how we read the data. But the purpose of determination is not only to read the data, it's also to update the information as well. So that's where we would be learning one more EML statement using which we would be able to perform a update. Okay, or I can say modify the information. So that's the main purpose of it. Okay, so I'll just execute this for now. And maybe after I execute, this would create again a travel ID with an empty key. I don't want this, so I'll just delete this. Okay. Now, another thing we want over here is that we want to learn another. Okay, we want to learn the way with the help of which, or I can say EML with the help of which we should be able to update the data. So I can say these are read EML and using which we read the data in a draft layer. So if we are able to read the data using a particular key parameter, definitely we should also be able to update it back. So I can say update the travel information with the new travel ID. So how do you want to determine the travel ID? That's also one of the question, right? So I'll just say I would like to write a logic to determine the next travel ID. So what I'll do over here is if you just go over here I would have, for example, maximum 4222, and where it is coming from, it's coming from its relevant view over here. So I'll just simply say that I want to select the max of my travel underscore ID from what? From my ZIEO travel M. Okay. Into, and I'll just provide a variable at the rate data. Max, or I can say new travel ID. Okay, I guess it would have something called travel ID like this. Yeah, so this particular view is having a travel ID, which we are getting the maximum out of it. Like what is the maximum value it is storing? Because whatever is the maximum, we want to get the next value of it. Increment to get the next travel ID. So I'll simply say this plus equal to 1. So my expectation is that it should increment the travel ID with 1. So that's why I'm using a shorthand operator in order for me to increment the value of the travel ID. Now, once I do have the new travel ID, my next purpose will be to write the EML statement which updates it. Okay. So this is a very plain and simple thing because we already know how to write a select query, how to write an incrementation on that. So that's totally fine. Now what I'll do is I'll just, like I wrote the read EML, same way we'll be writing the modify EML. So I'll simply say that I want to modify entities of, and here what I want to achieve. So you want to modify a particular entity. What is that particular entity? So I'll just say this is my root of that. Always specify the root, nothing else in local mode. Then you have to specify the entity of it, which particular entity you are talking about. So I'm just say this particular entity I am willing to update. Okay. Then what you have to update. So I'll just say update this, and what should be the data source from where you would be getting the data source from where you can update those particular information. So that's something that you should be specifying. Now, as you can see, even though we did this execution for a single record, but we are getting the information if in a form of a table. Now, why is that the case? Because currently we are consuming it only for a single record, but there are pretty good chances that my application might um, get used, or let's just say my services which I'm developing might also be used or consumed at an end where mass data calls are being triggered. And that's where SAP has designed it in a way that you will always be getting the data in a form of a table. So whenever your application is being referred from a Fiori application, you might get a single record, but whenever your application might be consumed, or I can say whenever your service is getting consumed from a some sort of a web API consumer, definitely you would get the more than one record. So in a single execution, mass data processing can be done. Okay. And that's where you would be seeing that whatever information that you are getting over here is in the form of a table. So now next thing is you have to specify, I want to update. So what is the value that you want to update? So I'll just say update from value. You will specify that update update is an operation. Okay, and then next thing you should be specifying is from value, what you want to update. And in this from value, you would be specifying the inputs. What are the inputs that you can pass in order for the information to get updated? So there are different ways of specifying this information. So this is the first one that we are talking about. So you do have a full table. Now it can have one record, it can have n number of record. I want that for each of them, my travel ID should get updated to the one which I'm talking about. So you will simply say for, and you would iterate on that particular travel. So I'll just say ls travel, and here you would specify in lt travel. Okay. Next thing is that you have to specify a couple of more things. You have to specify the property that you would like to update. Okay. So what all properties you would like to update? So you would like to update the travel ID of it. Okay. So you would like to update the travel ID of it. So you have to specify the travel ID over here. So you would simply specify the travel ID over here. I'll just say travel ID equal to okay. So this would ultimately update the new travel ID over here. And another thing that you should be specifying is like what particular field you are willing to update. So what you can do is you can simply specify percentage control. So like we do have a BAPI, same way we do have a control flag over here as well. In BAPI, we used to have a control flag, if you remember, which says that whatever information you can update. For that, there were two kind of flags, right? One which says that for example, I would have a data. Another one which would says that I am willing to update this flag. So whenever you want to update the flag, you would pass an X, a single character one. Same way here, you would have a control flag, which won't be a single character. Instead, it would be a behavior flag, which says a 01 or 00 on and off. Okay, so we do have a standard interface for that as well. So I want to update a travel ID. So I'll just go over here and we'll specify that travel ID, LV new travel ID over here. And here you would specify IF ABAP. So you have to specify this constant which says that whether you want this information to be updated or not, and which particular information you are trying to update. So you are saying I want this travel information to be updated. Okay, so that's what you would be specifying over here. Okay, so now one constraint that you would see over here is that there are pretty good chances that this particular modify entities might fail, because as you can see, for me to actually update a record, I would need a legitimate key. Okay, but in this particular case, as you can see, I am directly passing the new travel ID. Now, if I am passing a new travel ID, the system may or may not be able to determine those particular information, and that's why this can fail. So if it fails, maybe we'll see, okay, what is the alternative or what are the precautions, how your database should be enhanced in that case. Okay, so that's something that we will be seeing. Okay. So now over here, one thing that you would have observed is that we are writing modify entity, and in the modify entity, while we are passing the key, right, we might have a capability of specifying a information which is more than one as well. Okay. So definitely I can have I do have a chance where I can enter more than one fields to be updated. All you have to ensure is wherever you do have a field which you want to update, you should actually specify the value as well as the control flag for both of them. Because if you are not passing that particular information, then definitely you would end up in an error. Because for a modify entities to work, what it needs an at least one percentage control flag to be set as true. Because if the percentage control flag is not set as true, that particular information won't get updated. So this is something that won't um, allow execution of the modify entities. Okay, so let's just say I am activating this. Okay, so now what I will do is I'll just go back over here and I'll just refresh this application. Let's just try creating this. Let's just go back over here and just say I want to see what is going on. So I'll just put a breakpoint over here and let's see how it goes. Let's just say create. Okay, now let's just try to show a view for the variables as well at the same time. Okay, and we do have certain locals over here. Okay, yeah, as you can see, as we are not able to pass the right information over here, the system is failing. Now, why is that the case? So when you are saying read entity, definitely you are reading out the information, right? But when you are saying modify the entity, you are trying to modify the information. Now, when you are saying that you are willing to modify the information, definitely you are you are willing to modify certain fields. That's okay. But how I can ensure that the information which is getting updated is only for that relevant record? For that, I need to pass the key information. But the issue over here is that I am only updating the key information over here. So if I'm trying to update the key information, how my system would be able to know that which particular record I am willing to update? Because a key is an input, a key is something that you are updating. I cannot have two fields which I can pass directly over here, right? So what's the solution for that? Okay, so at that point in time, one thing would come at a rescue for us. That's something called, we'll just go over here and we have to add one more thing. And that's something we can call it as a early numbering. Okay, so when you say early numbering, the system recognize that you are willing to number your record even before it is created. Okay, because the moment you say early numbering, your record will always have a option to. Okay, just a second. Okay, when you say early numbering, your system will ultimately give you an option, give you a handler where you can define, or I can say determine the number at the early stage of your application. So for example, here we are saying application travel ID, which we are making a read only. Let's just let's just try to make this travel ID read only itself rather than making it for the update enabled as well. Okay, post which what we'll do is I'll just activate this. Okay, let's just do a syntax check. Here you are getting some suggestion. It says add early numbering method. So I'll just go over here. And here, as you can see, we are getting a method for the early numbering. So what's the method name over here? You are getting the method name over here called early numbering. And this early numbering ultimately gives you a placeholder where you can at least define the number of your particular record. Okay, and that particular number of the record, you would be able to pass it on. So as you can see, you are having a method called early numbering create. And in this early numbering create, you are getting the entities, the record that is supposed to get created. And at the same point in time, you would be able to return the number that you are generating. Once you are returning the number that you are generating, your system would be able to show that number beforehand, before even your record starts showing up. Okay. So one thing what you should be knowing is that in case of a semantic key, so as we mentioned, right, we are going to learn two kind of business object. The one is with a semantic key, one with a GUID based keys. As the semantic key are something which are also primary key for a database table, and there would be a constraint while updating those information into the database like we did over here. You won't be able to use an update EML statement over here, or I can say modify EML. That's where what would come at a risk for you is a early numbering concept. So what you would do is you would simply say, I don't want this information to be there. Instead, I want, okay. Instead, I want a early numbering create to make the tweak over here. And it would allow you reading the info, it would allow you creating the new number for you. Okay, now what you would do over here is you would try to get the new number over here, and what would be the input parameter for you? The input parameter for you is the entities. Okay, so you would ultimately define the input parameter. You would ultimately read the input parameter that is called entities, and you would try to generate, or I can say populate your map parameter over here. Okay. And the map parameter will ultimately help you map the output data to the output parameter. Now, as you can see, if I just say entities over here, I'll just go inside. You would see one very important information which helps you uniquely identify a record, even though you don't have a travel ID in place. That's something which is called percentage CID. So this percentage CID is something that is will automatically get filled by your Fiori framework. You will get those information, and if you just go over here in the map, in the travel, you would see that the same percentage CID is something that you should be returning. So for example, if you do have n number of output parameter, you would get a clear idea of like what particular information you are willing to return. Okay. So at that particular point in time, you would have a placeholder using which you would be able to return the information. That's something that you should be doing. Now, one more thing, early numbering is something that would get executed during the record creation. In certain scenarios, when, for example, if I talk about a purchase order or a purchase contract or any sort of business document, there can be two kind of scenarios, one with internal numbering and one with external numbering. And purchase order, purchase contract are definitely a semantic key based objects. So if you're going with an early numbering over there, if it's a concept of an external numbering, definitely you can expect that the key is being passed by the user itself. They'll be passing the purchase order or purchase contract number. So in that case, you should not update any sort of information, but only at the scenarios where you are having internal scenario where you are going to generate the number. Only at that particular point in time, you should be writing the logic to generate those numbers. Okay, so I'll just go over here and just activate, and we'll try to debug it through, and we'll try to assign a number for that. Okay, so what I'll do over here is we'll enable the early numbering for both. Be it my num over here. I'll just simply go over here. So early numbering is not implemented. So if I just go over here. Okay. So for this as well, I enabled early numbering, and here I can put a cursor simply. Let's just do a syntax check. It might take some time due to the network connection. Otherwise, it would give me a suggestion. Okay. or maybe we can also do it on the behalf of the system. So if you just go over here, you would say that it says that for numbering of the travel, and where it has defined it, it has defined it at the travel layer. Okay. Same way, if you just go over here, you would find that that particular travel that you are talking about over here, you might also have some sort of a other numbering. So for example, this particular numbering implementation that you did was for the travel. Same way we want to do it for the booking. So I'll just say early numbering over here, but it's nothing but a create by association of booking. And what you are trying to do over here is that you would get a importing parameter over here, and you would like to do the numbering for booking. And then you would like to implement this method. Okay, let me just activate this. So this particular method will be responsible for you to generate the number of travel, and this particular method will be responsible for you to generate the number of booking. So both the methods will be responsible for the key parameter generation. As you can see now, I don't have any warnings or errors. Okay, let's just start with one in that case. So I'll just put a breakpoint over here, and we no longer need a button over here, breakpoint over here. So I'll just go over here, close this, go back, discard the draft, refresh this page. Okay, so when I say early, like what is this early stage? So early stage is a stage when actually your information is not yet populated, even when your system, or I can say screen, is not yet loaded. Okay, so at that point in time, definitely you can expect that you would, at that point in time, definitely you can expect that you would pass the number even before the record creation. That's the case of early numbering. So if I just put a click on create over here, as you can see now, you are navigated back to your Eclipse over here, and you are having a cursor over here. Okay, correct. Now if I just go over here and just check out the variables, so I just have window, show view, and variables. Okay, and here I am in my local. And here, as you can see, I do have something called entities, which gives me the information that, okay, there is one record which is in creation. Context ID is something which the Fiori is generating. You are not required to have any worry on that. For this particular record, which says %CAD is draft. Okay, for this, you are supposed to return a travel information. So as you can see, once you double click on this, you would say that, okay, it is having a 3 columns layout. Okay. And what are those 3 columns? So if you just put a cursor over here, you would see that your map is having a travel %CAD is draft over here. So what you can do is you can simply fill the information of the mapped. I'll just say fill mapped information from entities input. Okay, so you want to fill what? You want to fill the information of your map parameter. So I'll just say map over here should get the value okay, and for all the information that you are having in entities, you are just saying entities, you would be filling certain values. So what all information you have to pass? You have to pass the information of %CID over here, right? And here you would say ls entities. And here in the %CID, definitely you would pass the same %CID that you had. Same way, in order for me to identify my particular record, I have to pass a particular information over here in the particular key parameter of it. Okay, so for that, what all information I do have in top on top of it. So what you would be doing is you would have a parameter for the percentage is draft as well. Is draft. Mapped is having this percentage is draft. What's the issue? No component exists for 4. Oh yeah, correct. My bad. So what you would have observed over here is that mapped is a structure, right? We are trying to assign the value at wrong place. So it's a mapped is a structure. Inside that there is a table called travel. This is what we want to populate, right? Now it seems to be correct, right? Correct. Okay, on top of it, what is the other information it is willing to have? It is willing to have one more information called travel ID, and this particular travel ID should get the information from this. So let's just say this. Okay, so here what we just did is we determine the value of my particular travel information. Okay, so we are iterating on a particular entity information that we already got. And whatever information that we already got, we are directly mapping it to my output. Okay, so whatever information that I'm getting, I'm directly passing it to my output. And whatever new entity ID that I am generating, that's something that I'm passing even. Okay, so I'll just say I try to stop this execution of the debugger and we'll try to activate this. So let's see how it goes. I just close this. Okay, so once we do have it activated, I'll just go back and let me just deactivate the debugger. I'll just skip all the debuggers. There is a button to skip. Okay, I'll just go back, refresh the page. And I'll just create this. So as you can see, very nicely, system generated a number called 4223 for me. Okay, and now if I just say 2025, sorry, 2023, 25, 2023, 25, today, tomorrow, and 100 USD. I'll just say create. System generated a number 4223 at the very early stage. Very early stage at the time when actually there was nothing, not a single record available. Next time, if you just go over here and just say create, you would see that system is generating another number called 4224. So this is how the early numbering will help you. So in case of a semantic key based object, definitely what you would be going with is a early numbering. If